Talk to me about the very first pavilion. What was your inspiration and why did you put it in the park? What was its connection to your gallery?
Well, I think, that truism about necessity being the mother of invention is incredibly important insofar as we had a gala for our 30th anniversary. We had lost our patron, the Princess of Wales, who died a couple of years before. Well, the gala was then delayed and then it was reconstituted for our 30th anniversary. We didn't have enough space to have it in the gallery. We needed to create a container, really, in which to hold it. And so the rule of the game that I devised was that we would give ourselves the same amount of money that Vanity Fair spent on a marquee for the lawn of the gallery. And we invited Zaha. And so the rules of the game were as follows. It had to resolutely speak for what the Serpentine was then, and actually in my view still remains. So we had no flowers, we had no decorations, Zaha designed the furniture. It was a commission, it was about architecture, which was new to the Serpentines programme at that time. And also it was very fresh, and it was in a way completely counter-opposite to what we had done with Vanity Fair, which was unbelievably brilliant, hugely successful, but they were no longer our sponsor. So rather than people saying, oh, it wasn't as good as when Vanity Fair did it, we decided to do something so fundamentally different that there could be no comparison because it was so resolutely different. And that was really the starting point. And it was only, the other thing I think was an important issue for us was that the Royal Parks were hugely controlling about what we could do outside the gallery. And they really basically made it impossible for us to do anything. And because the Secretary of State at the time, Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport at the time, Chris Smith, came to the gala and loved Zaha and loved the pavilion. And I asked him, I said, can this stay? It then meant that we could keep it up for the whole summer, which if we'd gone to the Royal Parks in the normal way to ask for permission, they would never let us do. So in a way, those accidents, if you like, or those collisions of possibilities really opened the doors for what then turned out was a programme that achieved world recognition. But I think I would have been very hard pressed to have thought of that sitting in my office or in the bath or wherever. But rather, necessity as it was, being the mother of invention, yeah. It then all sorts of things became possible. And so that's my answer.
Yeah, what a wonderful beginning. And how did you use it the whole of summer? How did you? We
immediately installed a cafe, and it basically, because we weren't planning to keep it up. The galas at that time were always we did something specially for the evening. So we did a special exhibition about the history of the Serpentine in visually. So the artists would show how the painters or sculptors or any other, something that spoke to the history of the gallery. But because, we had this wonderful permission from Chris Smith unexpectedly, we had no time to install programs or discussions or talks. But it was really a place for people to come and hang out and be in the park and say, oh, what's this? How strange. What does this mean for it to be here? But the thing that I wanted to say, having read all the texts that you kindly sent me, for the Serpentine, the pavilion became the town square. And I think that's really, or the village square. I think that is an incredibly important thing, but it's more to do with this democratic space where people can come, where they are completely uninhibited. Nobody ever said, can I come and sit here? Nobody ever said, do you mind if I move the furniture? Nobody ever said, I'm going to set up my picnic, is that okay? Never. Whereas that you'd see them looking in through the doors of the Serpentine going, ooh, what's in there? Can I go in? Is it for me? Whereas people never felt like that about the pavilion. They felt it was theirs from day one. Even though it was not a landmark that they were familiar with, even though it was actually by a contemporary architect who, if you'd asked them away from the pavilion whether they liked contemporary architecture or felt comfortable with it, they'd probably said, no, not at all, I'm not interested in that. But actually, that kind of ownership, I think, is the most important.
And I think
that inhabiting a space.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it's become in Melbourne as well. Having taken the lead from you and what you did, I think that community space, that utopian space, that feeling that there's no inhibitors to that space is exactly what the MPavilion represents as well in Melbourne, the town square, the village square. And I think it has become a space where anybody can do anything. And for us, the program represents that freedom as well as the architecture.
Great. Yes, well, I mean, your program has been incredibly successful and much celebrated, which is, you know, an enormous tribute to you.
Well, to the team who have put it together, who have been amazing and very thoughtful about the way the program's worked with the architecture as well. Mm. And how did you find Sean's pavilion? That was the first one, and the first one you saw too.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Sean's work, and I saw the art school when I came to Melbourne previously. So I was very intrigued to see what he'd done, and of course very enthusiastic. And I love this idea about, you know, it could be a box, you know, really, it's like a present, you unwrap it, it unwrapped itself.
Yeah.
And you could have various stages of that unwrapping. And therefore, as a result, various perspectives of what the architecture both was and also could be. I mean, I think the thing that I learned from the Serpentine Pavilion is that even though the footprint was small, there have to be elements of surprise. It couldn't be just revealed in one glance or in one experience. That, in fact, the architect and the structure had to work very hard to be unexpected, which of course is a tall order for something of that scale.
Yeah. And how do you think that the pavilions evolved for you? What were the elements that you thought went forward or the elements that didn't go forward? What were the things that excited you? Because I've taken so much of my lead from the work that you've done originally.
Well, I mean, you're very kind. I suppose for me, the first and foremost thing was about the design, really. I mean, when I went, the Museum of Modern Art in New York did an exhibition about Japanese architecture. I think there were 8 architects. Oh, no, there were 5 architects, and 3 of them showed their Serpentine Pavilion, and I was beyond ecstatic. I mean, the shrieks, the yells. If I say I wasn't expecting it, so it was surprised. And you know, it's this idea that, you know, the Barcelona Pavilion, Mies van der Rohe's Barcelona Pavilion is a tiny structure. But, you know, it stands for all time as an example of great design. And so that was always my touchstone, if you like. So, I mean, one of the things that I learned from the first year or what turned out to be the first year, which was Zaha's Pavilion, was that, you know, the pavilion needed to be inhabited, it needed to be used, needed to be cared for, and also people need to feel comfortable about just hanging out. Yeah. The reason we put a cafe in it was so that people felt comfortable being there, that it gave them something to do which was neutral. And that's really, I mean, we never made any money from the cafe, and nor did the poor people who ran it ever. But it was a kind of convention, if you like, about allowing people to rest and to be still, giving them permission even. So, because actually absorbing art or architectural design requires, it's better if it's done over a period of time. And most people, particularly now, and every year comes true, and every year that passes, you know, we all spend less time looking rather than more, because the pace of life. It's very interesting what the virus has done for all of us in that sense of slowing down, reflecting, being still.
The point about COVID-19 is that it has made us stand still and observe and think very differently to what we did before.
Yes.
And
so what are your plans, Naomi, for your future pavilions?
Well, consequently, because of COVID-19, as you know, we're not building a building this year, and we're going to use the 6 pavilions that we've already built to program this year, which I'm feeling really excited about, that we're going to take a different turn due to circumstances, but we're going to experiment a lot more than we have before. And I'm really excited about that experimentation. It's allowed us to support a lot more creatives as well in every endeavour, from music all the way through to architecture, design, visual arts, horticulture, education, all of the things that we love to do. And I think it's going to prove to be very fruitful. I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. As you
very exciting. I mean, the virus has also proved for all of us to be the mother of invention. You know, It's really forced individuals and businesses to think what we can do to in a way take control of the situation or adapt it to make it the best for all of us.
And I think that we've had a lot of interest in the fact that we're encouraging people to think about what will this mean for the design of cities? What will this mean for the design of restaurants? What will it mean for the design of everything that we do if we're going to be living with social distancing and other elements which force us to reconsider the way we thought normal was before, and what it means to be still and observe and think. So there's a lot of interest in that conversation and debate around what this is going to mean for public transport, for instance, where people are very reserved about the opportunities that they really don't want to be in public transport or in major shopping centres or any congregational areas. And one of the advantages for us is having 6 pavilions is that we're going to be able to move, and we'll be able to be virtual as well. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of having those conversations as well. I guess I always saw every piece of architecture that I've been involved with as having the same humanistic elements in a way. Each one of the architects that I've worked with, I've been lucky enough to work with, I think have got the same values that I've demonstrated in the buildings that I want to be part of too, like the office building, which I built to be a place where people could look out, look inward, see green or see the sky, where it was of a scale that was human, really trying to give people a space where they could be creative and thoughtful human beings. And I'm really interested in how COVID-19 is going to express itself in the years ahead with the way we tackle architecture and our interfaces with other buildings that are there that have been built before, as well as what's going to come up. I think it's really important to think about what this will mean to the way we build for people in the future.
Tell me why you wanted to do a book. Tell me why a book of the pavilions is important. because interestingly, they are permanent structures. They go on to exist. So I'm being a little bit provocative, but and why after 6 pavilions? Why not after 5 and 10?
Why a book? I think we wanted a permanent record of what the pavilion became, much more than just an architectural form or a built form. We thought that we could represent the commissions as a very important part of the dialogue and debate we wanted to have around architecture and how it affected the urban landscape, of course. So the book became a way of expressing the multitude of people that we'd worked with, the hundreds and thousands of people that we worked with, all of the commissions of furniture, costumes we'd made, the students we'd worked with. It's actually turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful volume of how we wanted to make the pavilions a place for people, like you said in the beginning, that it resonated with so many different groups of people who felt that this could be a utopian space that allowed them to do whatever they wanted in there. And a lot of the commissions were brought to us by people who just wanted to be part of the experience as well and the debate. So doing a book seemed a logical extension, yet a commissioning of other people to write and interact. So again, we were furthering our desire to work with creatives and to prompt them to think about what urban spaces could be like, what comments they wanted to make on it, like Deborah Cheatham, the Indigenous singer, who wanted to comment on the land that we were standing on. So it allowed us to do a lot of things like that and to put them obviously into one volume. The photography's beautiful, the commissions look gorgeous, the writers have done a great job, the architects are very happy. I think we chose to do 6 because in the beginning we thought we were only going to do 6 pavilions, so we prepared for that. And now, of course, we will have a year where we're commissioning artists, designers and architects without building the physical pavilion, and then we will have 2 more after that. So we'll be doing a 2nd edition of the book.
Oh, fantastic! Congratulations, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
That's great. It's good to it's good to see into the future while you're barely in the present. Very good. And how is it? I mean, I remember very well for the opening of the first pavilion, Sean's Pavilion, the acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples was incredibly important. We have many considerations in this country, but that isn't one of them. So it was, and also at that point I hadn't been to Uluru and the Northern Territories, which was the most fascinating experience that I'm incredibly grateful to you for. How does Australia's history come into your pavilion, or not?
Well, I think it's very much part of the pavilion because from the very beginning we've thought of the land as the space where the pavilion is as a very important connection. And since then we've developed a lot, the team have developed a lot of programs, and over the last few years Sarah Lynn Rees, an Indigenous architect, has been running a Black architecture program right through all of the interactions we have with all of the pavilions.
But I mean, it's very, very impressive, Naomi. You know, your whole commitment to architecture, to design, to expanding, you know, social space, programming, really important talks and discussions that will go down for history as having made a contribution to the subject. It's really, really exciting. On the 6th anniversary, a celebration and huge congratulations.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, of course.